Pande lame shabla solvade. Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasaneka Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Sumatimu Nishasaneka Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nish Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Dhagi Jitsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Sikso So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Oyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tseche Nyingne Solo Dechen Korlo Viso Leksho Ne Yila Sambe Dodon Malyo Gemel Hunge Drubra Chinge Lo Tsoni Sodan Diktun Shape Tse Dunge Namke Yinsa Labchen tsonye yonso tsopa dan chera nye tun chanwara chingelo chancho parge nyensen tukun tu nyu peme siudru lekshune chancho drube gegen kunshishi tungen de la drubra chingelo dagelo na chola chokpa dan chemin samjor ngemba shiwad chodan tumbe dodon malupa beme lunge drubra chingelo Dorna tengne tsera tamche dan teche pardo nekab tamche tu rese kyamne lama kele me tukche chingi dala sikso so gongyab drewe nyamda dachala chetsun lame tuche rab gongne kodan sunge nawa dralme tu nyamsu nyongwe kesan tobrasho kewa kundu yanda lama dan drame chiki pela longche ching Rabzone dorje change kopa nyur toba sho pakyo ke kudan dagi lo pakyo ke sundan dagi nga pakyo ke tukdan dagi yin ten yerme chikto chingi lo makyo ke kudan Dagi lo ma kyo ke sungdan dagi nga ma kyo ke tukdan dagi yi ten yerme chikto chingi lo Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Amuni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Amuni Shakyamuni Swaha shipu ki chu shime to Tramare rabalinga shi ni de padi sangye shinto mikte ulwarki kunam da shingla che pare sho je tsulame kutseraptem chinam kar chingle chochurgepa lo santempe dren me sasum ki drove se taktu ne gyurche yidam guru ratna mindrala kam niryatayami Sangye chedan tsoge chanam la chanchu pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchre sangye drupare shu sangye chedan tsoge chanam la chanchu pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki Drola pinchre sangye drupar sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chanchu pardo da dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchre sangye drupar sho nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nella Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni, possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. Namo alhai ke da ludan ne jin ke rubunan da mi ke nam da ruwa kun ke dhanam che tsampa tamche ke to dagi che ten to tamche ke to dagi che ten. Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Innanzitutto sono contento
First of all,
che siamo
I'm
qui
happy
insieme,
that we are here together,
che abbiamo preso questo
that
spazio
we
di tempo
took this space of time
per dedicarci
to dedicate ourselves to meditation,
a capire un po'
to
che
understanding a bit what it is, how to meditate, and to get closer to it, to experience it.
E tutto parte in
And
realtà
everything
da un
actually starts
concetto
from a
semplice,
simple concept.
che è qualcosa che ci accomuna,
That is
è un
something
po' la
that
forza
is
che ci
common for
spinge
all of
anche
us,
ad
and that
essere
is also the
qui,
force that pushes us,
che è la
drives
voglia
us
di
to be
stare
here
bene.
today. That is
Noi vogliamo
the
star
desire
bene,
to be well. We want to
non
be
vogliamo
well, we don't want to
soffrire.
suffer.
Poi questo stesso
And
desiderio,
then this same desire,
idealmente, se
ideally,
espande
it
verso gli
expands
altri,
towards the others. It's not something that excludes the other, but also not also oneself and includes the other. And here, though, there is a fundamental question, like, okay, I want to be well, and I possibly also want to help others to be well. But what can I do? And I believe that when we observe reality, our own reality, starting from ourselves, we see that we have a body. What happens inside the body, how much does it influence our experience of life? A lot, right? So, for example, how hormones work. Does it change our experience of life or not? To make a recent personal example, a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, something like that, I had an allergic reaction here in the arm, like some insect bit me and made my histamine increase to a very high level, and for 3 days I was very nervous. But it's not because like there was something that was not right, because I have other defects, but that's not my problem. But I felt that there was something there, that it was physical, that was also manifesting in the mind. And so the body is extremely important in our own physical state. What I eat is fundamental. The way that I sleep or don't sleep, or everything that happens inside of our bodies has an important role in the equation of the so-called equation of well-being, or of the being, plays an important role, an important part. And then there is a part that is related to the environment in which we find ourselves, whether it's hot or cold, whether there is a tense situation around us, or the whole context that is around us. Also that influences us strongly. Then there is the third brick, that is our mental state. What happens inside of our mind inevitably has a relation inside of the body. What happens inside of the body also has a relation to what happens inside of the mind. So body and mind shouldn't be seen or lived as two separate things, but as two manifestations of the same. Also two doors of access to the same thing, that is the being itself. So we have the body, which partly is the easiest one to access to. Then there is the mind, where every thought, every emotion transforms the being and determines our experience of life. And then there is also the environment. Actually, the environment meant as like all the objects of our senses, what I see, touch, smell, the situations that I live, the people that I meet, everything that is around me, the environment. Also here, I don't exist as I am independently of the objects with which I interact and the environment that I am in. So in this moment, what I am in this moment is dependent on each one of you. If you were not here today, definitely I would be different, and the other way around. And so the environment that I live determines partly who I am, but at the same time, me, my mind, my body determines the environment that I live. So what I live doesn't exist for me independently of myself, my senses, my physical and mental state, psychophysical, that eventually is one thing. And so we have these 3 points: body, mind, and environment. Body, mind, and environment, they are not like 3 totally separated things. Actually, they are like manifestations of the same. Because when something changes in my mind, then it also changes in the body. When it changes in the body, then also in the mind. when it changes in the environment, then it changes in the body and in the mind, and the other way around. Sometimes someone says, you see that person is not sincere, it's not true. When it's with another person, then it's different. Yes, of course. Because we, according to the interaction, we transform differently. No person exists in an autonomous, independent way of the environment in which he lives. We transform according to every interaction. And when we talk about this, the fact that we try to look for a state of well-being, peace, harmony, at the end is a balance among all the parts. We need to work on all these aspects. And here comes to my mind, once that I went to my master Ganglakpala in India. It's a story that I've already shared many times, but it helps us to understand the point where we want to get to. I had to leave. I was in India. I had to go to Borobudur in Indonesia. So I go to him and I say, Gela, can you check whether astrologically is a good day to travel? And he said, no. Please, Gela, you know how to do it. Yes. Can you please check? No. And so I insisted, and after a while he said, no. Then I was like, okay, at least tell me why. And then he asked me, have you already bought the ticket? Yes. So in case it comes out that it's a bad day to travel, do you have the intention to change the day of travel? No? Okay, that's why I don't check. And then he said, if I check and it happens that it's a bad day to travel, the influence that your mind has on your experience and yourself is 1,000 times greater than all the stars and planets put together. So for that reason I don't check. Then, yeah, I could have used the Tibetan technique. That in the Tibetan culture they have like many smart ways. For example, okay, you have to travel on Thursday. Thursday you have like you have the flight, the ticket for Thursday, and you check and it's a bad day astrologically to travel on Thursday. It's like, so in our mentality, what would we do? Either we won't care, or then we get worried, or we change the ticket. Tibetans, no. What would they do? Okay, the journey starts on Thursday. Okay, the ticket is that and it remains like that. But I leave home on Wednesday. I sleep in the house of a friend, and then I go to the airport the day after, and the journey started a day earlier. So I left the day earlier. They have these things in various contexts that actually work. Anyway, the main point that I wanted to bring here is that the environment in which we live is important, yes. Our physical state is very important. But in the whole of our life, of our inner state, one of the parts that has the greater influence are our thoughts, our mental state, emotional state, our inner state. And so we can condition the environment in which we are up to a certain point, and it's also right to do it. Then, not now, not in this session, but further on, we will see the various conditions to meditate correctly and so on. The first prerequirement to meditate correctly is called to be in a favorable place. When we are learning how to meditate, the place in which we are has an influence on us. So if you try to meditate in a discotheque, then it doesn't work. Also the bar, it doesn't work. You're in the middle of a context where there is a lot of chaos, it doesn't work. You need to create the favorable conditions to be able to maintain mind where you want. So the environment is important, but we can also condition and control the environment up to a certain extent. And also, when we are able to create a perfect environment, it's absolutely not enough to be able to be absolutely well. The body, okay, we could say that we try our best to take care of the body, or at least so it seems. And one of the fundamental points about the body, maybe further on we speak more about that, is the fact that to make a distinction where the priority in taking care of the body is what is good for me and not what I like. And already here it's a non-indifferent step, starting from eating and sleeping.
No, c'è una parte quando c'è all'interno, poi anche questo
Also, maybe we will look at it with more details. In the conditions to meditate well, there is also the protection of the door of the senses. The doors of the senses are the sight, the hearing, the smell, the taste, the touch, mind, the cognitive mind. I must protect my senses from objects that are not necessary, from situations that bring me where I don't want to be. And so,
da come mangio a come dormo,
in the way that I eat, in the way that I sleep, there are also two fundamental points in the preparation to meditate. To all the objects that I see, the context that I am, what I hear, all of this is important in life in order to be well, to maintain this balance. But the most powerful tool, absolutely the most powerful tool that we have for our own suffering or for our own happiness at the end is our mind. If we think a healthy, balanced mind in a context that is unhealthy and in a sick body is doing quite okay, is able to maintain a balance. A mind that is unhealthy, unbalanced, in an unhealthy context and in an unhealthy body is a bit like being in heaven and living in hell. And so, mind is one of the most important aspects that we have. And here there is a fundamental point, that is that our tendency is that of living our mental, emotional state, inner state, as if it was the result of the world that surrounds us. Usually, when we have a certain inner state, our first question is why? Who's the guilty of this state? Why am I feeling this uneasiness? And so we look somehow how to cultivate, to transform our inner states through the control of the world around us.
È chiaro questo?
Is this clear?
So
if I'm not well, usually do I work inside of me or do I look for the guilty outside? We look outside, we try to eliminate what according to us is not good. If we are well, then we try to understand why is that, like thanks to something that is outside, and so I try to also maintain that. And these two things bring aversion towards what we believe that brings us suffering, and attachment towards what we believe that it's the reason of our well-being, happiness. And so constantly we try to have a sort of control of the world around us. This includes the behaviors of others, includes situations that we live. But one question is very simple: does it work or not? Because if it worked, then great. But what I see is that even when we have wonderful conditions, even when we are in a context that is really beautiful, very often, after a while, at the beginning it's like everything is good, but then after a while something starts to come up. It remembers me a bit when we were in Mongolia last year, the day that we were leaving from the monastery of this friend of ours, Zavadandi Rinpoche. We were leaving from the monastery, and I was sorry, like it was like also well, and it was the beginning of September, and I was talking with Pamo, which is the wife of Zavadandi. I'm sorry to go away, we would like to stay longer, and she said, yes, just wait, the winter comes. where there are like minus 30 degrees. And it's a bit like, yes, you're well now, but when it's not anymore a moment of vacation, but you've been there for long, then what happens after a while? That what we have inside starts to manifest itself. If we find ourselves, let's imagine that we create an optimal situation, like a pleasant context and all of that, and we remain in that context. Let's say that the situation around us would be almost as if it was like permanent, like everything is kind of remaining the same. And we remain that 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That inner state of well-being, of pleasure that we had when we met that pleasant situation, does it remain the same as days pass? Sooner or later, what we have inside comes out, that are our own predispositions, jealousy, envy, fear, anxiety, anger, and the sense of abandonment, or everyone has his own, who more, who less. After a while, it's like once that someone that I met that went to meditate, it looked for many places where to do retreats of meditation. First in one place is not fine because there was this and that, then he went to another place, then he ended up in the mountains of Manali, which is in the north of India, beautiful place, in a hut in the middle of the apple trees. And then after a while that was also not fine because there were too many birds, too much noise from the birds. And so what happens is that very often when we are in a context, that after a while what we have inside manifests itself, whether it's distraction or dissatisfaction or sadness or anger, whatever. And so to create favorable contexts is good, but it's far from being enough. To take care of our body is important, but also that is absolutely not enough. Our mind, one of the fundamental keys here is that the mental state, the inner mental state, is not a simple result of the situations that we have around us. The situations that are around us are as if, how would you say, they are the trigger.
Qualcosa che fa scattare, no? Sì, un innesco, qualcosa che fa innescare quello che c'è dentro.
Trigger for what we have inside. The traditional term in the Buddhist teachings is called condition.
Ossia,
that is, conditions are of two types, inner conditions and outer conditions. Inner conditions are my physical state and my mental state, what I think, what I feel in the present moment, and my physical state. The outer conditions is everything that happens around me with which I interact. So actions, situations, people, heat, the cold, and so on. These two conditions interact with the predispositions that we have inside of ourselves, with the strength of the actions already created in the past. If I have a strong predisposition to the sense of abandonment, very easily in the situations, then they will awake that sense of abandonment. If I have a predisposition for satisfaction, then easily the conditions will make me take from that sense of satisfaction that will manifest itself, or anything else in the same way. So what we are living in the present moment, in any moment, is not the simple result of the world surrounding us, of the situations that we live, but it's the sum of what I live that actually is just a condition that awakens our habits of the past, what we accumulated and conditioned up to now. And then the condition of the present moment, the inner condition, also becomes a reinforce of conditioning, or another conditioning. So if I react with anger, then I reinforce that habit. And here, one of the most important point absolutely is, and we could also say where there is real hope, we are malleable beings. We transform ourselves according to the situations that we live, to the experiences that we live. That rule that we have talked about many times. Wherever there is interaction, there is transformation, and we are made out of habits. The more I interact in a certain way, the more I transform myself according to that interaction. In other words, the more I do something, the easier it will become to do that thing. And as Shantideva said in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, there is nothing that is not easy once that you are used to it. And here there is a fundamental point. And I remember one of our friends, Rohir, that is a doctor, and once we were in a congress together, and he gave a beautiful exposition in this congress where we talked about the macrobiotics and macrobiota and the neuroplasticity of the brain and of the epigenetics. And in the midst of this, it was ending by saying that science shows us very clearly that it's possible to change. Then we stopped after that and we were at lunch together, and I said, look, I really liked what you said today, but I don't agree with something. It's not easy. It's not true that it's possible to change. It's not possible to not change. We, in every moment, are in a process of familiarization. Every time that I complain, I'm familiarizing myself with that act of complaining, with that habit. I reinforce it. Every time that I take the phone in my hands and I do the international sport of the scrolling, and I stay in that samadhi state, a state of one-pointed concentration. Every time that I do that, I am reinforcing that as a habit. Every word that I say, every encounter that I have, every thought that I have transforms me and reinforces a habit or another one. The more I repeat something, the easier it becomes that that thing comes back in the good and in the bad way. And so it's not that we have the choice to say, I want to transform myself or I don't want to transform myself. I want to train or I don't want to train. We are constantly transforming ourselves and we are constantly training in a way that it's aware or not. Someone could say, there is no way out. No. It's not that there is the possibility of freezing oneself and I don't interact with anything. And even if we try to not see anyone, to not do anything, we are there with our thoughts. And also what seems nothing is something, so I get used to not seeing anyone. So it's not like I close up and I don't interact with anyone. That thing itself is an object of interaction with which we interact, the fact of not having anyone, not seeing anyone. And the main key here is the fact that we have fundamental characteristic that is translated a bit as our free will. In other words, we have the possibility of choosing if I want to transform myself and to get used to familiarize myself, to train, we can use different words, in a way that it's aware or in a way that it's not aware. If I want to transform myself simply in an unconscious way as a result of the various things that happen, or if I want to direct myself, my actions, to familiarize with certain things, to transform myself towards a certain direction. This is the main fundamental starting point. Because if this totally spontaneous way where we are not really thinking, okay, I do this to get to that. And then our greater tendency is that we live the present moment as if it was the result of the past, and that's it. I do this because that happened. I do that because I'm hungry. I do the other thing because that person said that. Or and when I say I do, I mean physical, verbal, and mental actions. So I have these emotions, I have this feeling because this happened or that happened. I tell you that thing because of that other thing, and so we have the tendency very often of living the present as if it was a simple reaction to the past. The past, the immediate and the remote past. There is also who today continues to react because 25 years ago, and so I see you and I get a huge aversion because 25 years ago you said that thing. Making a sort of making this bigger. Once I accompanied a friend that already passed away some years ago, so I like to remember her, Teresa. And she was an important person for some aspects also of the center and also the mantra when we do the self-healing. That melody came from her, she created it, she adapted it. Anyway, another day we talk about Teresa. Teresa was a person with many beautiful qualities, but had some mental fixations that were very rigid. And once someone took her to her house, she had a small apartment in the center of Bologna, and they accompanied her after quite some time that she hadn't been home. And so she gets there and they look at the house to see, okay, to help her to sell it. And there was the bathroom. Ah, no, you can't get there, she said, because a glass broke. So years ago, like a glass broke and there were still all the pieces on the floor and you couldn't get in. This is like a sort of caricature, a metaphor of what we often do. Ah, see, no. Yeah, yesterday you said, or 5 years ago you did that, or here and there, and we're still now into that, reacting to something that actually is already finished long ago.
Mi sa che tutti ci riconosciamo.
And I believe that we all find ourselves in this. And so what happens is that we live the present moment as a reaction to the past, and particularly our emotional state. And so anger or joy or love, very often we live it as if it was the result of what is happening or of what happened recently or remotely.
E questo è, diciamo, il modus
And this is the way that we work, the most common way that we have of working. The alternative is to live the present not as a reaction and a result of the past, but yes, as a conscious action as cause of the future. Because at the same time that what I'm saying now, the emotional state that I'm experiencing is connected with what happened, is also connected with what will happen. And our free will is really in our own capacity of directing our thoughts, our choices, our actions in a way that is aware. And so, in the present way, okay, let's give an example. We relate to many people, to different people. Think about a certain particular relationship that you have, maybe with your mother, with your son, with your wife. Think about any relationship. Is it perfect, that relationship? Hardly. Are we able for a moment, without getting into too many details, to create an idealized image of how we would want that relationship to be? For example, we want it to be a relationship of tension or of harmony. Ideally, harmony. Of trust or distrust. Trust, respect, or lack of respect. I would say respect. So we want the relationship that I have to be a relationship of trust, of love, of respect. Then we can go on. And I find myself in front of that person, something happened. By instinct, I would react to something, to that thing that happens with an aggressive way. That aggressive reaction as a cause does it generate trust, respect, or the opposite? The opposite. So I find myself in front of the situation, but I ask myself, what kind of relationship do I want to have with you? Relationship of trust, love, and respect. So I should behave now in a way that is coherent with what I want it to be. I breathe 3 times, 20 times, 1,000 times, and I act in a way that is aware instead of reacting with aggressiveness. Because if I react with aggressiveness, that also it will become a cause of what will happen.
Molto spesso noi
And so very often we have the tendency and also the fixation to ask ourselves why are things in a certain way. Sorry if I put it this way, it's one of the most stupid questions that there are. Really, for the fact that it's not possible to have the right answer.
Quando vivo una certa
When I leave a certain situation and ask, but why is it like that? The variables are so many that we will never be able to have a full picture of all the interactions that brought that thing to be in that way that how I live it. Maybe I am able to see 1, 2, 3 points and to say, see, that is the reason. No, actually there is a whole picture. And like the example that we give often of the equation, like we make a complex equation among all of us, and then we say, who's the guilty of that result? And I could point the finger at anyone and say, it's your fault because you choose that number. But the reality is that in the same way that if you had chosen a different number, the result will be different. The same is true for anyone else. We're not able to have a picture that comprehends everything and everyone. So the point is not to ask why and to look at the past, but in front, of what I have, what is the best way to interact with it for what I want to achieve? The question is not, I'm living this, why is it like this? Of course it's important to try to understand the dynamics, to not repeat them. This is another subject. The main point here is I find myself in front of a situation. The key is not why do I find myself here, but how should I face it at my best. And so we go from an attitude of reaction towards the past to an attitude of action that is aware, in a way that is aware towards the future. And this is about many things. It's about eating, to name one, or like, I have attraction towards a certain type of food. Doesn't matter why. Is it good for me? Yes, I eat it. Is it bad? Then I don't eat it. Yesterday, these past 3 days, I kind of traveled out of Italy, and one of the fixations that I set myself after reading some articles and talking with some experts about the subject, I want by all means to avoid the consumption of plastic, to decrease the quantity of microplastics in me. Also because one of the collateral effects of a high level of microplastics inside of the body is dementia, is Alzheimer.
And
for me, the last thing that I want to lose is my mental clarity. And so going around, it's not easy to find like water in glass bottles. Then I also should avoid sugars. Then what do I drink? I don't know. It's not that I find that I have many choices, so one has to organize oneself. I take water from the fountain, I bring it, I prepare it before. Very often what we do is the most easy thing, the most convenient thing. It's more easy to just take the plastic, just buy a plastic bottle, yes. But should I act like in the most comfortable way or towards what I want to build in the future? I want to have a healthy body, and so I should cultivate what makes me well and avoid what is harmful, even if it's not comfortable and easy in the present moment. without exaggerating. Okay, I have like a tremendous thirst and that there is nothing else than the plastic bottle, then I drink from it. But I try to look towards the future. And this brings us really to this awareness that our life is a constant training in the way that we act, talk, think in the present moment. This conditions and determines what we will be in our future. The way that I interact in the relationship with the other determines how will that relationship evolve in the future. For example, if at a certain point there is a tension, a conflict, and I get angry with the other and I create like a sort of knot inside of that sooner or later will touch me. Either it becomes like a bigger knot or I will have to face it sooner or later. What I do now, what I live now, doesn't end there.
Nel bene e nel
In the
male.
good or in the bad way.
Perciò, prima di parlare di
So,
meditazione, c'è una domanda
before talking about meditation, there is a question that comes before that is important. Do I want to live my life trying to have a more comfortable survival, living the present as a simple result of the past,
pensandoci poco.
thinking very little about it? When there are inner things that are more difficult, I try to forget about them and getting away from myself through the usage of alcohol or other substances or the addiction to the scrolling or whatever else. Because what I see that happens often is that when we find ourselves in a state of inner we feel bad inside, instead of trying to face it, we try to get away from it and to just think about something else.
Questa è una modalità che conosciamo.
This is a way that we know, and that unfortunately it doesn't work.
L'altra scelta è
The other choice,
voglio vivere la vita
I want to
in un
live
modo
life in a way that is aware,
e dove il momento
and where
presente,
the
quindi
present
le mie
moment and
scelte,
so
le
my
mie
choices,
parole,
my words,
i miei
my
pensieri
thoughts
vengono fatte come una
are
causa
done
consapevole verso
as
il
a
futuro che voglio creare.
as an aware cause for the future that I want to create. Physical, verbal, relational, social.
E questa è la differenza.
And this is the main difference.
La parola
The
meditazione
word meditation in Tibetan
dice gom,
is gom.
in
In
sanscrito
Sanskrit is bhavana.
vuol dire
It
letteralmente
means literally to familiarize oneself, to get used to something.
Il concetto di
The
base
concept, the
di
basic
meditazione
concept of
non è
meditation
entrare
is
in uno
not to get
stato,
into
dove uno non
a
pensa
state where
niente,
one
è
doesn't
solo
think about
presente nel
anything and is
momento
just
presente.
present in the present moment.
Il concetto di
The concept
meditare
of
vuol dire io
meditating
vado a indurmi
is
a
that I
qualcosa
induce
che
myself to
vorrei
something
realizzare.
that I want to
E
realize.
ripeto quella
And I
cosa
repeat
così
that
tante
thing so
volte
many
finché
times
diventa naturale
until
e
it becomes natural and spontaneous.
Ok? E possiamo applicarlo
And
questo
we
in uno
can
stato
apply
fisico.
this to the physical aspect.
Io voglio,
I want
per esempio,
For
una
example,
corretta postura, sedersi con
a
la
correct
schiena dritta.
posture to
Cosa
sit
mi
with the
fa
back
bene?
straight. Like it's something that
Uno
is
non è abituato.
good for everyone. One is not used to it and sits like this.
Più volte mi siedo
The
all'inizio
more
è
times
faticoso,
that I sit
più
straight,
volte mi siedo
then at
con
the
la
beginning
schiena
it's
dritta,
difficult, but the more I sit
piano
with the
piano
back straight,
diventa
then
un'abitudine.
bit by bit becomes a
Sto
habit.
meditando
I am meditating
alla schiena dritta,
and having
mi sto familiarizzando con quello.
a straight back. I'm
Non devo
familiarizing
mangiare
myself with that. I
latticini,
shouldn't
caso
eat
personale.
um,
È faticoso.
lactose. At the beginning it's
Ripete
difficult.
una,
My
due,
personal
5,
case, you
10,
repeat it like
100,
3,
1000 volte.
5, 10, 100 times, then okay, I care little now. I don't have many problems with that because it became a habit.
All'inizio non
At the
era
beginning,
facile.
it was not easy.
Mi trovavo davanti alla
I will find
mozzarella,
myself in front of
era un
mozzarella and
problema.
it was like a problem.
Ok? O come
Or
2 giorni fa
like
ero ad
2 days
Asiago,
ago, I
ho
was
fatto
in
una
Asiago
conferenza, alla fine della
giving a
conferenza
conference, and at
ho
the
fatto
end of it,
l'esempio
I gave the
durante la
example
conferenza di questa storia del
of this
latticino,
story of
per fare
lactose
un esempio di
to make an example of what is harmful but that we like and that we should avoid. And I gave an example of this. And at the end, there was one of the sponsor of the event, and they gave me cheese as a present from Asiago. And I'm happy to just give it to someone else. A while ago, I would have been like, yeah, must be so tasty. And I like cheese a lot. Now, not eating cheese is an act of love towards myself, and I feel good with that. It's not a sacrifice, but a process of familiarization was necessary. When we talk about meditating, it means to induce ourselves to some positive virtuous states with which we want to familiarize ourselves. Patience, gratitude, love, stability, concentration, coherence, inner coherence, and so-called wisdom. There are many aspects. I induce myself to that state, and I maintain myself in that state in order to familiarize myself with that. To make it so that gradually it becomes natural and spontaneous. It seems that sometimes this idea there is this idea that meditating means to enter into a state where one is a bit detached from the world and the mind is just still with no thoughts. It's not that. There is a part inside of the meditative process that we will see later that is about stopping thoughts and being present in the present moment, but that is just an aspect of the meditation. In meditation, one of the fundamental questions is, on what do I want to meditate? So to meditate is an action, and cannot be simply, it's not that you simply can meditate. I must meditate on something. You cannot simply meditate. Okay, it's like, I need to get used to. One cannot simply get used to. One must get used to something. So to meditate is to get used to familiarize, and so I should familiarize myself, get used to something. So what you're doing now? Now I'm getting used. Now I'm doing a technique of familiarization. But with what? And when we check what are the possible objects of meditation, with what can we familiarize ourselves? The answer is with anything. I can familiarize myself with anger, hatred. I can familiarize myself with violence. Unfortunately, it happens. There are situations that are terrible, that at the beginning one has a terrible difficulty to see that suffering, that violence, or to commit it. After a while, that is repeated, continues to be harmful, but then it becomes less and less difficult. And so it's possible to get used to familiarize with anything. And so for this, before starting with the journey of meditation, one should ask oneself, on what do I want to meditate? Because otherwise, there is a danger of falling into that idea that meditating is a simple exercise to empty the mind, and that state of emptying the mind has some positive aspects also, short term, but also some negative effects, mid and long term. Because when I try to get into this state of emptying the mind, with what do I familiarize myself with? With an inner state of, I wouldn't say being like detached, but where simply I don't feel, and there is a danger of getting into a nihilistic view, an experience where there isn't anything, I don't feel anything. And then it's fundamental to be able to stop thoughts, to be present, to concentrate the mind on one thing, the part of the awareness, the so-called mindfulness,
è fondamentale, meraviglioso,
is wonderful and fundamental, is part of the path. There is no criticism about
Però quando
that.
parliamo di
But when we
meditare,
talk about meditating,
qualcosa.
there is something more.
Quindi
And so
la prima domanda che è
the first
fondamentale per noi
fundamental
è
question for
perché
us is why to meditate.
E vi spiego prima
And before
dare la risposta
giving the answer,
perché chiedersi perché meditare.
I ask you even why to ask
Qual è
myself
uno
why
dei
to
più
meditate.
grandi
What is
ostacoli
one
che
of the
abbiamo
greatest
per creare
obstacles
nuovi
that we have to create new habits?
La pigrizia.
Laziness.
Anche formalmente
Even formally, inside of the ancient Buddhist teachings, the first of the obstacles, of the difficulties to develop the meditative state is
pigrizia.
laziness.
La pigrizia nasce
Laziness
da una cosa
comes from quite a spontaneous thing that we have.
che noi abbiamo in
That
noi
we
stessi la
have
legge del
inside of
minimo
ourselves the law of the minimum effort.
La legge del minimo sforzo.
The law of minimum effort
qualcosa
partly is
importante
something that
per
is
noi.
important for us,
Perché una delle
because
principali
one of the main
funzioni del
functions
nostro cervello
of our brain
è quella
is
di
that of
gestire le nostre
managing
energie,
our resources,
gestire le nostre
managing
risorse.
our
Quindi, se
energy.
io faccio
So
tanto movimento
if
con un
I
braccio,
do a lot of
naturalmente
movement with
manderò
one
più
body,
energia
naturally
verso
I will
quel
send
muscolo
more
lì.
energy towards those
Se
muscles.
smetto
If I
totalmente
stop
di muovere
totally
quel
to move
braccio,
that arm,
io sto dando il messaggio
then
quel
I
braccio
will
non
send the
serve
message, okay, I don't need that
manderò
arm.
meno
I
energia
will
verso
send
quel
less
braccio.
energy towards that.
Se io utilizzo una
If I
parte del mio
use a part of
cervello
my brain
più per dire della memoria
about
piuttosto
more
che
about memory or
razionale piuttosto che di
rational
qualunque
or
tipo,
of
più
any kind,
vado a usare
the
una
more
parte
I
della mia
use
mente,
a
più
certain
mando
part of my
energie
mind,
per
the more
quello
I
e
send
più
energy
quello
for
diventa
that, and the
più
more
forte,
that
no?
becomes stronger.
Meno utilizzo,
The less I
piano
use it,
piano vado a
then
perdere.
bit by
C'è
bit,
anche
then I
quel
will lose it. There
termine
is also
che viene
that term
utilizzato in
that is
inglese,
used, use it or lose it.
O lo utilizzi
Either you use it
o
or
lo perdi.
you lose it.
E l'esempio
And the
classico
classical
è che
example
noi abbiamo una
is
memoria
that we have
oggi
a
molto,
memory today
molto,
that is
molto
much
più debole
weaker
di quella che
than
c'erano
what
decenni
was
fa.
there
È ancora peggio
10,
di quello che
20,
c'era
30 years
stato
ago, or much worse even than what
Perché
was
oggi
there
noi abbiamo
centuries ago.
la
Because
memoria
now
esterna,
we have external memory,
dai libri
books,
ai cellulari
phones,
e tutto il
and
resto,
all the rest.
che è un'illusione.
That is an illusion.
Quando non c'era la memoria
When there was no
esterna,
external
era più
memory,
normale
then it was
allenarsi
more normal to train
con la
oneself
memoria
in the
interna.
with the
Una
internal
volta non
memory.
c'era,
Once there was
me
no,
lo segno da qualche
I
parte,
write it
o te
down
lo
somewhere.
tieni in
Either
mente o
you
è
keep it
finito.
in your mind or
Io
it's
sin
just
da
gone.
piccolo si
And since
abituava
one was little, then
avere
we get used to
quell'esercizio di
having that
ricordarsi.
exercise of remembering
Gli
things.
insegnamenti di Buddha,
The
ma anche
Buddhist,
di
the
Gesù.
teachings of Buddha, but also
Quando
of
sta-
Jesus.
io parlo del buddismo, non-
I talk about
cristianesimo non ho
Buddhism
la
now. I don't
conoscenza
have
per dire,
knowledge
però
of
da quello che
Christianism,
so,
but
anche nella
from what I
tradizione
know, also
cristiana,
in
la
the
Bibbia non è stata scritta
Christianity,
da Gesù.
Bible was not written by Jesus.
Quanti anni dopo?
How many years
400?
after that? Like around 300?
No? Anche se poi lì
Yeah.
non è il
Also
mio
there,
campo,
it's not my field,
è
but
una compilazione
it's like
di
a
testi che
compilation of
c'erano già
texts
nel
that
mondo, no?
were
Nella
right there in a
tradizione
way or the other.
buddista, circa
In
anche
the Buddhist
300
tradition,
anni. I sutra
also
di Buddha sono
around
stati scritti
300
circa 300 anni
after
dopo la morte di Buddha.
the death of Buddha were
Per quei
written
3
down
secoli
the
la
sutras, the
gente si
teachings of
ricordava.
Buddha, and for those centuries,
Quindi dopo
people
che
were
Buddha è morto, i
remembering
suoi
them.
discepoli si
So
sono riuniti.
after that Buddha died, his
È
disciples
come se
gathered,
ci
and it's as
riunissimo
if, okay,
tutti,
we all reunite,
ognuno alla sua
and
volta
everyone
si mette
as
seduto, hanno preso tutti i
they
mantelli
all
gialli
took
di ognuno
like
di loro, hanno messo sopra, hanno fatto un trono,
the yellow
ognuno veniva, si
cloaks
sedeva
of each one, and
e
they
raccontava.
build like a throne
Una volta
with
così
those
uniti.
piled them.
Mi trovavo in quel
And
posto,
so
ora
everyone then will tell a
presente
story. I was
Buddha,
finding
questo,
myself in
quello,
that place, there
quell'altro,
was
quella persona
Buddha,
lì fece
that other
questo,
person,
aveva
that
fatto Buddha,
person
quello
asked a
risposto
question to
così,
Buddha,
così,
Buddha
così,
replied
così,
this and
va.
that,
E raccontavano
and they
quello che
were
avevano visto
they were
e
telling,
sentito.
telling what they heard and seen,
Avevano una memoria
and so,
praticamente perfetta.
and they had a practically perfect
Quelli che
memory.
sentono il loro
Those
racconto
that
se lo ricordano tutto.
listen to
E
the
lo
stories
raccontano
will remember
a un
it
altro.
completely
E
and
questi
will tell it again to someone else.
102, circa
And these
108 volumi,
around
sono
108
tantissimi
volumes
sutra,
that are
per 3
like so many
secoli
sutras
erano
for 3
tramandati
centuries
in
were
forma orale.
transmitted in an oral
A
way.
un certo punto
And
si
then
sono
after a while they
accorti che le
realized that
versioni
the
orali
versions, the
cominciavano
oral
a essere un
versions
po'
started to
diverse.
be a little bit
E gli
different.
hanno detto,
And
dobbiamo
then
metterle
they
insieme.
said, okay, we need to write it down.
Quindi la memoria è
And
una di
so
quelle
memory
caratteristiche
is
che
one of
più la
those characteristics
utilizziamo,
that the more we
più
use
si
it,
sviluppa.
the more it develops.
Meno la utilizziamo,
The less we use it, the more gradually it deteriorates.
Perciò,
And so,
visto che abbiamo una quantità di
since
energia
we have a
limitata,
quantity of energy that is
il
limited,
nostro sistema
our
toglie
system
energia da quello
takes
che non
energy
si
away
usa.
from what is not used.
E se c'è due
And
possibilità,
if there are
una
two
per
possibilities,
ottenere la
one to
stessa cosa
obtain,
o qualcosa di simile,
they're both to
c'è
obtain the
una
same
con poca
thing, and
fatica, una con
or
tanta
like something
fatica.
similar. One
Spontaneamente quale
takes
scegliamo?
requires a lot of energy and another very little. Spontaneously, what will we
Cerchiamo di
choose?
evitare
The
la
one that
fatica.
requires little. We try to
Proprio
avoid
perché
effort.
cerchiamo di
Really
utilizzare
because we try to use
proteggere in
and
qualche
to
modo le
protect
nostre
somehow
risorse,
our
l'energia che noi abbiamo.
energetical resources that we have.
Questo sistema è quello
And
che
this
ci permette
system
di
is what
sopravvivere
allows
in
us to
tanti
survive
versi,
on
ma è
many
quello anche che
aspects,
ci
but
frega
also
tanto.
what tricks us somehow.
Ed è qua che ci
And
vuole
it's here
la
that
insistenza.
we need to
Dire,
insist
ok, voglio
and to
quella cosa lì,
say,
è faticoso,
okay, I
però è
want the thing,
importante.
it's difficult, but it's
E a quel
important.
punto,
And at that point,
se c'è tanto desiderio,
if there
c'è
is a lot of
tanta voglia,
desire
c'è
and
tanta
there is a lot of
aspirazione, credo
wish,
nell'importanza di
aspiration, and I
quello,
believe in the
riesco
importance of
anche a
that,
faticare
then I'm also
finché
able
poi
to
diventa
put
un'abitudine.
effort, and then it becomes a habit.
Però la pigrizia è il
But
fatto di
laziness
vedere
is the fact
qualcosa
of
e
seeing
dire non voglio
something
faticare.
and saying, okay, I don't want to put effort.
La pigrizia è fortemente
Laziness is
connessa con
strongly
questo
connected
senso
to
di non
this
voler
sense of
faticare,
not wanting to put
non voler
effort, not
affrontare
wanting
una
to
cosa che è
face
difficile.
something that is difficult.
E quando
And
la ragione
when
per
the
farlo
reason to do
è più debole
is weaker
della voglia di non
than
faticare
the
e della fatica che c'è
wish to not
dinanzi a quella cosa, cosa
put
prevale?
effort and the difficulty in front of that thing, what prevails is
Quindi definizione di pigrizia.
the effort,
Questa
so
me
the
la sono
laziness.
inventata io, può essere
Definition of
inventata.
laziness. So this I came out,
Secondo
I
me la
invented it.
definizione di
According
pigrizia
to me,
è
the definition
l'insieme di due
is
fattori.
the two factors put together:
La consapevolezza,
the
la
awareness,
certezza
the certainty,
concettuale
the conceptual
dell'importanza
certainty
di
of the
qualcosa,
importance of something,
sommato
summed
alla mancanza di
to
voglia per la
summed with
stessa.
the lack of desire for the same.
So che mi fa bene
I know that it would be good for me to meditate, but I don't feel like it.
so che mi
I
farebbe
know that
bene
it would be
mangiare
good
così, ma
for
non
me
ho
to eat in
voglia.
that way,
E
but
quello non
I
ho voglia,
don't feel
vuol
like
dire
it.
c'è una
And that
fatica di
I
mezzo
don't
e
feel
non
like
voglio
it means that
faticare.
there is like some effort involved and I don't want to put effort.
Come faccio a superare
How
questa soglia della
can I
fatica?
overcome this
Come faccio a
threshold
superare questa soglia
of
della
the
pigrizia?
effort and of the
Questo riguarda
laziness?
qualunque
And this is about anything.
Quando io mi ero chiesto questo,
When I asked myself
mi era stata
this at the
detta la
beginning,
seconda risposta.
the
Per
following
superare
answer
la
was given to me.
pigrizia deve
In order to
sviluppare
overcome
sforzo.
laziness, you need to develop effort. Okay, thank you.
Uno che non c'ha voglia,
One that is lazy.
si deve sforzare.
Yes, you need to put effort. Okay.
Non funziona.
It doesn't work.
Però se noi andiamo a vedere proprio gli
But
insegnamenti
if we really
classici,
look at the classical teachings in the Lamrim, is explained
c'è un
that
processo causale.
there is a causal process that is
Mettere energia in
to
qualcosa,
put energy into
quindi
something.
mettere
So
sforzo.
to put
La
effort,
definizione di sforzo
definition of
è
effort is
mettere energia in
to
ciò
put
che è
energy
positivo,
into
però non è
what
facile.
is positive, but it's not easy.
Un qualcosa che sia piacevole, facile,
Something
non richiede sforzo.
Something that is pleasant and easy doesn't require effort because it comes spontaneous to put energy there. I don't know.
Immaginate
Imagine
qualcosa che vi piace
something that
tanto
you
e
really
che richiede
like
un
and that
certo
requires a
sforzo,
certain
una certa
effort,
energia da
certain
mettere.
amount of energy to be put there. I don't know.
Mangiare qualcosa di
Eating
molto buono.
something very
da
very
faticare.
tasty. Do you need to put
Però
effort?
devi comunque andare, prendere,
Yes.
andare in
You need to
quel
go to the
ristorante,
restaurant,
spendere
spend some
soldi,
money.
andare fino lì,
You need to go
sedersi,
there and
chiedere,
sit and
ricevere,
ask for
c'è
the food.
dell'energia
There
che
is
va
some
messa per
energy that needs to
mangiarlo,
be
digerire
put
tutto il
there,
resto, va.
also to eat it, digest
Ma
it,
quando è
and
una
all of
cosa
that.
che
But
io
when
lo voglio,
it's
che mi
something that I want,
piace,
that I like,
eccetera, eccetera,
and
che
so
non è
on, that is
faticoso, non è
not
sforzo, è energia che
difficult,
metti
it's not
da
effort,
parte.
it's just energy that I put.
Quando invece
When
devo
actually
fare il
I
cibo
need to
che
eat the
mi fa bene, ma
food
non mi
that is
piace
good for me,
tanto,
but
già
that I
lì ci
don't like
vuole
so much,
sforzo.
already you need to put effort.
Sforzo è mettere l'energia in ciò che ti fa
Effort,
bene,
to put effort
ciò
is
che è
to
positivo,
put energy into what
virtuoso, ma che
is
non è facile.
positive and virtuous,
vuol dire
but that is
mettere
not
sforzo.
easy. That is
Lo
putting
sforzo
effort.
nasce
Effort
dalla
comes from
aspirazione.
aspiration.
Aspirazione
Aspiration
inteso
meant
desiderio,
as
nel senso
desire in the positive sense.
che la parola
Because the
desiderio
word
ha un'altra
desire has
connotazione,
also another connotation.
anche se nella nella nostra
even if in our
linguaggio comune
common language,
desiderio è voler qualcosa.
desire is wanting something.
Nel contesto
In the
buddista,
Buddhist
della
context of
filosofia
the
buddista, il
Buddhist philosophy,
desiderio in
desire
realtà
actually
riguarda
is
il
about
proiettare
the
su qualcosa delle caratteristiche
it's
che
about
quel qualcosa
projecting
non
on
possa
something characteristic that that something cannot
puoi
sustain.
volerlo. Ok? L'aspirazione è sì, il semplice
Aspiration is
direzionarsi
the
verso qualcosa.
simple act of directing oneself towards something. So, but to simplify, we say to desire. Because to put energy into something, I must want the
Noi
thing.
non mettiamo
We
energia
don't
in
put
ciò che
energy
noi
into what
non
we don't
vogliamo.
want.
Quando c'è passione,
When there is passion for something,
quando c'è tanta
when there is a
voglia,
lot of
siamo
want
disposti a
for
faticare.
something, we
Prendi una persona totalmente
can
innamorata,
put effort,
si fa dei
can put
problemi,
energy. Like a person that is
mette
totally in love,
dell'energia di faticare in un modo o in un altro per cercare
will
di
that
conquistare
person
quella persona, per
have a
quello
hard
che è?
time to put energy to try to conquer the other person and this and that? No,
Perché c'è passione,
because there is
c'è
passion,
desiderio,
there is
c'è
desire,
quando
there
c'è
is
passione per
when
qualcosa,
there is passion for
quando
something,
vogliamo
when we
qualcosa
want something
fortemente,
strongly,
non abbiamo
then
difficoltà
we
di
have
mettere
no
energia in
difficulty in
qualcosa,
putting energy into that thing,
anche se faticoso.
even if if that's difficult.
Perciò per realizzare
And
qualcosa
so,
devo
to
mettere
realize
energia.
something, I need to put
Per
energy.
mettere energia devo
To put
volere
in order to
quella
put
cosa, devo
energy, I need to
desiderarla,
want
devo
to
aspirare
desire
a
the
quella
thing. I
cosa.
need to aspire to it.
Per avere
In order to have
aspirazione, io devo
aspiration,
avere
I need to
fede.
have faith.
Fede
Faith
inteso come
meant as
credere
believing
nella
in the
esistenza
existence
di quella
of
cosa,
that
nella
thing, in the
possibilità
possibility
di quella
of
cosa,
that thing,
nelle sue
in its
caratteristiche e nelle sue
characteristics and
funzioni.
in its functions.
L'esempio classico
The
è
classical example is
ho tanta
I
sete,
have a lot of thirst.
non voglio più avere
I don't want to be thirsty anymore,
e io ho fede nell'acqua.
and I have trust, I have faith
Io credo
in
che è
water.
possibile
I believe that
ottenere
it's
l'acqua,
possible to
io
obtain
so che
water.
io posso
I know
bere
that I
l'acqua,
can drink
io
water.
so che l'acqua
I know the
ha le
water has the
caratteristiche
characteristics
di pulita,
that is
è
clean,
fresca
is fresh,
e ha la
and
capacità,
has the
le
capacity,
funzioni
the
di
function
pulire,
of
eliminare la
cleaning
sete,
and
eccetera, di settare così.
of eliminating
Quindi
thirst.
quando io credo che l'acqua
And
esiste,
so when I
che
believe
io
that the
posso
water
ottenerla,
exists
che
and that I
l'acqua
can
è
obtain it,
pulita
that the water
e
is
che
clean,
l'acqua ha
that
la
the water has
capacità
the
di
capacity
dissetarmi,
of
io ho fede nell'acqua.
taking the thirst away, then I have faith
Quello mi
in water.
permette di
That
desiderare
allows me
l'acqua
to
dinanzi alla
desire
sete.
water,
E a quel punto io metto lo sforzo di
and then at
camminare
that
il tempo
point I put the
necessario,
effort
fare
to
il
work
necessario per ottenerlo.
for what is necessary to obtain the water.
Ok? Perciò,
And so,
per superare la
in order to
pigrizia,
overcome laziness,
abbiamo bisogno di
we
prima
need
aver
first
fede,
of all to have faith,
conoscere
to
quella
know
cosa,
that thing,
credere nelle sue
to
qualità,
believe in
nel
its
suo
characteristics and
potenziale.
in its potential.
Quello ci genera
That
desiderio, voglia,
generates
aspirazione,
desire, want,
che a sua volta
aspiration,
genera
that in
sforzo,
turn
mettiamo energia in quella
generates
cosa per poterla realizzare.
effort. We put energy into that thing
C'è
in
un
order
altro
to
punto
realize it.
importante.
Another
Non basta
important
la
point
fede.
is that faith is
Vi
not
dico
enough.
una che è un po' brutta, però
And
il termine utilizzato tradizionalmente non è molto
term
bello.
that is traditionally used is not very
Passa
nice,
quell'idea.
but passes the
Non
idea
basta
quite
aver
well.
fede,
It's not
ci
enough
vuole
to have
anche
faith,
paura.
we also need to have fear.
Se io non ho paura
If
della
I
sete,
don't fear
c'è sete,
thirst,
poco mi importa
okay,
che c'è
I'm
sete.
thirsty, yeah, I don't care.
Io credo nell'acqua,
I believe in water,
ma non ho tanta
but
voglia,
I don't
per me
really
non è
feel
un
like
problema
it.
la
For me, it's
sete.
not a problem to be thirsty.
Farò la fatica di
Will
camminare
I
chilometri
put,
per trovare l'acqua?
will I make the effort to walk for kilometers to find water? No.
Non basta credere
It's
nell'acqua,
not
io
enough
devo
to believe
voler
in
evitare la
water.
sete.
I need to want also to
Noi in
avoid
quanto esseri
thirst.
umani in
We
generale
as
ci
human
sono
beings
tre
in general,
forze
there
che
are
ci
three
spingono a
forces
fare
that
qualunque cosa.
drive us to do anything.
Questo non è,
And
non è
this
un
is
qualcosa del buddismo
not
in sé,
something
anche se
about
nel
Buddhism
molto
by
coerente
itself,
questo.
even if that's very coherent with
Viene
Buddhism also.
descritto in certi
It's
altri
described
studi del
also in some
comportamento umano
inside of some
che ci sono
studies
tre
of human
principali
behavior that there
forze
are
che ci
three
spingono
main
a fare
forces
tutto
that
quello che
drive
facciamo.
us to do anything that we do.
E in
And
essenza noi
in
facciamo
essence,
qualunque
we do
cosa o
anything that we
perché
do
quello
either
ci
because
porta
that thing
qualcosa di buono
brings us to something good,
o perché quello
or
evita qualcosa
because
di
that
brutto
thing avoids
o
something
perché
bad,
c'è una
or
ragione
because there
morale.
is a moral reason.
Mi sono preso l'impegno,
So I
l'ho
took
detto
like the
che
commitment, I said that I will do it, and
altrimenti non
otherwise
lo facciamo.
we don't do it.
Ok. Quindi quando c'è
And
l'importanza
so
di fare
when there is
qualcosa, dobbiamo
something that is
utilizzare tutto
important to
questo
do,
a
then
nostro
we need to
favore.
use all of this
Perché
to our
meditare?
favor. Why to meditate?
Perché io comunque
Because anyway, I am familiarizing myself with something.
e se io mi lascio
And if I allow myself
in un modo
to be familiarized in a way that is unaware,
finirò
then I will end up
ripetere e
repeating and
rinforzare le
reinforcing
dinamiche che ho già.
the dynamics that I already have.
C'è uno studio
There is a study
una volta mi hanno
that
raccontato che diceva
of which
che
it told me
oltre
was
il
that
90
more than the
90%
90%
dei pensieri che abbiamo
of the thoughts that
sono
we
di
have
solito
are
ripetizioni di
usually
pensieri
repetitions of previous thoughts.
Secondo me
According to
è
me,
anche
it's like
oltre il
also
99%.
more than 99%.
Quello che succede che cos'è?
What happens is that
Se io non
if
vado a
I
interagire in un
don't
modo
interact
consapevole, la mia
in a way
tendenza
that
è
it's
quella di
aware, my
comunque
tendency anyway is
mantenere,
that of
rimanere in un loop
maintaining, remaining
delle
the same
abitudini
loop
che già ho
of
e
habits
rinforzarle
that I
sempre
already
di
have
più.
and reinforcing them more and more.
Anche perché se noi
Also
guardiamo noi
because if we
stessi,
look at ourselves,
siamo noiosi.
we are boring.
Non so,
I don't
c'è
know.
qualcuno che vi
Is
viene
there
in mente
someone
che
that
ogni
comes to
volta
your
che
mind that
vede
every
quella
time
persona
that
si mette a
person
lamentare di
comes,
qualcosa e uno sa già bene
complains
la
about something,
categoria
and
di
you
quel
really know
lamento?
more or less the category and the type of complaint?
Che
That
indipendentemente
independently
verso chi sia la persona
of
o la
the
situazione più o meno
person
sempre lo
or the
stesso?
situation that it's related to, it's kind of the same.
No? Noi non siamo diversi.
We are not different from that.
Alla fine dei
At
conti,
the
se
end,
andiamo a vedere
if we
le
check
categorie,
the
le
categories, the macro
macrocategorie delle nostre
categories of
lamentele,
our
eccetera,
own
ci stanno
complaints
in
and so on,
mano.
we can fit them in one hand.
E poi di solito
And
siamo
then
agli
usually
epicentri delle cose.
we are there
Perciò
repeating
se noi
things.
non andiamo
And
a
so
familiarizzarci
if we don't
con quello
familiarize
che ci fa
ourselves
bene in un modo consapevole,
with something that is good for
la
us in a
nostra
way that it's
tendenza
aware,
sarà
our
di
tendency will be that of
rinforzare le
reinforcing
abitudini che noi
the
già
habits that
abbiamo
we already have
sulla base della
on the
condotta
basis of
quotidiana
the
che
daily
certo abbiamo, quindi
conduct
sulla base
that we
delle
have,
nostre
so on the
azioni,
basis
delle
of our
nostre parole,
actions,
dei
of our
nostri
words,
pensieri.
of our thoughts.
Se noi
If
spontaneamente
spontaneously
abbiamo una condotta
we have
sana,
a
abbiamo un modo di
healthy
pensare
habit,
equilibrato,
healthy conduct, we have a balanced
gioioso,
way of thinking,
soddisfatto,
we have a
amorevole,
joyous,
se noi
loving
abbiamo un
way
modo di
of
parlare
going about
sano,
things,
bene,
if we
tutto
have
questo è
a
spontaneo,
healthy way of
diciamo così,
speaking and
serve
all
a
of this
poco
is
meditare.
spontaneous, then we could say that
Perché già in un modo naturale,
serves
spontaneo,
little
tu
to
stai
meditate, because already in a
familiarizzando con
spontaneous
quello che
way
è
you are
positivo.
familiarizing with what is positive of you.
Serve meditare in questo caso
It's
per
useful to meditate in
familiarizzarci
this
con
case, to
aspetti
familiarize
ancora
ourselves
più
with
positivi
even
che non
more
vengono
positive
spontanei.
aspects that don't come spontaneously.
Se noi abbiamo delle
If we
attitudini
have
che
some
non ci fanno
attitudes
bene
that are not good for
e noi
us
non andiamo a
and
trasformarci
we
in un
don't
modo
transform ourselves in a
consapevole,
way that
la
it's
nostra
aware,
tendenza
our
sarà
tendency
di
would be that of
ripetere quei modi
repeating
di
the
vedere,
same
quei
ways, the
modi di
same
agire, di pensare, eccetera, e
habits, and the same ways
rinforzarli
of
sempre.
thinking and reinforcing them more and more.
Quindi se in questo momento
So
noi
if
guardiamo
in
noi
this
stessi,
case,
facciamo una
in this moment, we
fotografia di
look at
noi stessi e
ourselves and
vediamo,
we make a photograph
io
and
quali
then
sono le cose che
we
non
say, okay,
vorrei non
what are the
avere come
things that
abitudini?
I don't want to have as in habits?
Un po' meno di pigrizia
Okay,
non
a little
sarebbe
bit
male,
less laziness would be nice,
essere meno reattivo,
to be less reactive,
un po' più
a bit
amorevole,
more loving,
più soddisfazione,
more
più
satisfaction,
stabilità
more
interiore,
inner stability,
meno suscettibile a ciò che mi
less
accade intorno, non preoccuparmi di
dependent
quello
on
che gli
what
altri
happens
pensano di
around me,
me.
not to
Si va
worry
avanti.
about what other thinks of me, and we could go on and
Vedo
on.
queste cose,
I see
che
these
bello sarebbe
things,
se fosse così.
how beautiful it would be if it was like that.
Devo camminare
Then,
in quella
okay, I
direzione.
need to walk towards that direction.
Voglio
I
familiarizzarmi.
want to familiarize myself with that.
Ok? Perciò la
And so,
meditazione nasce
meditation
anche da un
comes
altro
also from
fatto,
another
che è
fact that is
la chiave del nostro
the
percorso.
key of our
Non è
path is
cambiare il
not
mondo che
to
ci
change
circonda,
the
ma cambiare
world
il modo
surrounding
in
us,
cui
but to
noi
change the
viviamo.
way how we live the world.
E per cambiare
And to
dobbiamo
change, but in order to change, we need to repeat and repeat and repeat,
ripetere qualcosa affinché
so that
gradualmente quel
gradually
qualcosa
that
diventi
something
naturale.
becomes natural.
E la cosa più bella
And the
è
most
che la
beautiful
nostra
thing is that
mente
our mind
è malleabile
is
e noi
malleable,
possiamo creare
and we
delle
can
nuove
create
abitudini
new habits
a livello mentale e a
on the
livello
mental
emozionale,
and on the emotional level,
oltre che a livello verbale e
other
fisico.
than on the verbal and physical level.
Ok? Quindi, perché meditare?
So, why to meditate?
In realtà perché voglio star bene,
Because I want to be well, actually.
perché voglio aiutare gli altri a
Because I
star bene.
want also to help others to be well.
E perché anche
And
la
also
principale
because the
risorsa,
main
la
resource
principale
and the
forza
main
che mi genera
force
benessere
that
o
generates
sofferenza è
well-being
la
or
mia
suffering
mente
is my
e
own
le mie
mind
proprie
and my
condotte, le
own
mie proprie
conduct, habits, and if I let this flow freely, then I will repeat the habits that I already have and I will reinforce them. There are some that are good and some that are not so good, and I want to cultivate those that make me feel well. And I cannot familiarize myself with something without getting in touch with that something. The only way to familiarize myself with something is by interacting with that. So, for example, what does it mean to meditate on love? Sometimes we think that meditation on love is to reflect on the meaning of love, thinking about love. No. If I'm reflecting on the meaning of love, then maybe I'm meditating on the meaning of love. I'm familiarizing myself with the meaning. But we care little to understand what does it mean to love. What we really need is to love. So I go through a process to induce myself in an artificial way, because it doesn't come spontaneous in that moment, to a feeling of love towards anyone. And once that I've generated that feeling of love, I try to remain in that state of love for a longer time and as present as possible. And with this, and through this, I am meditating on love. And here there is another important point to understand. Let's imagine a muscle. Let's say that I want to develop a muscle. I take a weight and I exercise. If I exercise many times, then I just leave it. One day passes, I take it again, I exercise a little bit more, and then I leave it. Then I make some exercise, then a lot of time passes, then I do a little bit more. Does it work? Little. I should have a certain constancy, and every day, with a certain quantity, bit by bit. Because even if one day I do like 8 hours, then I don't do anymore, that also doesn't work. When we need to train ourselves into something, then we need to take that thing and do it with constancy. And as I'm doing it, I should be present in that, because if as I'm doing that thing, then I'm doing also 20 other things, then in that hour then I'm doing that, because let's say that I have 1 hour to exercise, like 15 minutes maybe, to train my arm. But in those 15 minutes, instead of doing this for 15 minutes, I'm doing this, and then I do this, then I do this, then I do this, then I come back to this, and then I go here and there, then I go this, go there and do this. And so, and because I started the 15 minutes doing this, and then I ended also doing this, then I say, okay, I've done 15 minutes of exercise. But if I check in those 15 minutes, how many times did I actually lift the arm, the stick, and maybe 5, 10. Another thing is to take 15 minutes where I don't do anything else but doing the movement with the arm. The time that I spend is the same, but the time that I dedicate to the training is totally different. But when we need to train with something that is external, it's easier to see, okay, I need to repeat the movement, I need to be present in a certain context, to get used to a certain temperature, I don't know, 1,000 different things. But when it's about to get used to something in the inside, in order to familiarize with an inner state, I need to generate that inner state, and I must remain in that inner state for the time for which I want to familiarize myself. Because, for example, to meditate on love, as we just said, in order to meditate on love, I try to meditate, to reflect on the meaning of love, it's a bit as if I want to exercise with the arm, and there is the weight there in front, and I look at the weight, and I say, how beautiful, how interesting, how it's shaped, you know, when you lift it, and it gives this effect, because it's there and there, and I can spend hours reflecting on the weight. So, until I take it and I do the movement. And until I do that, then I don't train the muscle. I can spend hours, years reflecting on how important it is to love and how love is. That will also help. But until I really feel love, I'm not training myself on love, in love. I'm not meditating in love. And once I really do it, there is a huge difference whether I feel love and remain for the time that it is inside of that feeling without doing any other thing. It has a power of transformation that is much, much greater. But rather than, okay, I generate love, then I think about lunch, then I go back on the feeling of love, then there is this and that, and the mind goes here and there. It's much less deep and intense as a process of familiarization. So, why to meditate? Because I want to get used to and generate some inner states. I want to feel more gratitude, I want to feel more love, I want to overcome my anger, my jealousy, envy. If we look at a deeper aspect, why do I want to meditate? Because I want to get out of samsara. I want to get out of this inner cycle of ignorance, selfishness, and jealousy, fear, anger, hatred, rancor, and all the actions that we do through this. And I am tired. Then, okay, there are the collateral effects of meditation. Is good for the heart, for the pressure, mind is more relaxed, one has less anxiety, sleeps better. Great, but that's not the goal. There is something that is much deeper. And then, of course, okay, you want to take the technique of meditation in order to relax yourself and face the problems of anxiety and blood pressure. Great, do it, it works, there is nothing wrong with that. And very often it can happen that one starts with one thing, and then actually that brings you to something deeper, and that is also great. One maybe has a lot of anxiety problems and starts to meditate for that, and then that bit by bit brings you to many other profound and beautiful things. So why to meditate? Because I am made out of habits. I don't have the choice of familiarizing or not, and I want to live the present in a way that it's aware and to act with awareness towards what I want to become. What do I want to become? What do I want to be? Because if I don't have clarity on that, then I will not find the reason why to meditate. I want to be a stable person. Stable means my emotional state is conditioned very little by the situations that happen around me. If we take a snapshot, if we give an image of this inner stability, it's like a very big tree with deep roots, and when the wind comes, the tree feels the wind, but doesn't let itself to be dragged, to be taken down by the wind. Yes, sometimes the wind is very strong, maybe it bends, and then it comes back to the center. Another thing is to be like a leaf, free, flowing, flying in the wind. Then the wind goes right, then one goes right, then the wind goes left, one goes left, up and down. It doesn't have roots. So I want to be a stable person, where I have the perception, not an insensitive. We're not talking about becoming like a block of concrete. We're talking of being like a tree that feels the wind, feels what is around, but doesn't let itself to be taken by that, and has the flexibility of moving and to let it pass without being dragged by it. So we leave the various situations, we feel what happens, but we don't allow those situations to take away our inner state of stability, of balance, of joy, and we don't allow them to make us lose our balance. Would it be nice to be like that? Also because there is a basic rule, the problems exist and will always exist. So if I condition my state of well-being depending on problems and external situations, then I don't have any chance.
Non lo so. Cercare di
Because it's a bit like trying to dry something with the sponge as you leave the water, let the water running. And then you, for as much as you can do, then it never ends. And so to solve problems is part of life, but it's not the final goal. And so I don't want to live in a perfect world. I want to have an inner state, an attitude that allows me to maintain my balance independently of the situations in which I find myself. I want to be someone that, when sees the other, is able to see the other and not feel the other as a threat. I want to be someone that when I find myself in front of the other, I'm able, without effort, to feel empathy, to have sympathy, to have love, compassion. Remembering that compassion is not in the sense of suffering for the suffering of the other, but it's to wish for the other not to suffer and to do what is possible for that. Further on, maybe we'll talk more about this. But I want to be a person that is in harmony with the others and that has an open heart. I want to be someone that doesn't put oneself on the defense or on the attack.
Bello, no?
Beautiful, right? I want to be someone that is able, in a natural way, to perceive and to be in harmony with the natural process of constant transformation of everything. Instead of living things that are impermanent as being permanent and being left disappointed when things change, I want to be able to live the constant process of transformation of everything, not as something that is bad, but as something natural that allows me to go towards a direction or another direction. I want to live with awareness, no rational awareness that I am not me if you are not you. I would like to live with the awareness that one thing is one thing and another thing is another thing. But that one thing is not one thing if the another thing is not another thing. I don't know if it's clear. Then further on we can talk also about this. But that means to live in the awareness that everything has its own characteristics, but at the same time everything is connected in a mutual dependency that then is called interdependence. I want to be satisfied. I want to be able to see the problems and to have the self-esteem, the strength to face them without fear. I want to be able to allow myself to see the good aspects and to rejoice of that, to live in a state of joy, of satisfaction. I want to not have fear, not be afraid to put effort into what is positive, to have this flow of energy going towards things that are positive and virtuous. I would like to not have to put effort to do what is good for me instead of what I like. I would like to be at peace with my past and not to live with a sense of guilt, not to live with a remorse. I will want to be in harmony with the present and to have a vision of the future with hope, with joy. And we can add also other things, but I think that's already enough. And so, let's try, everyone, and also invite you to also write down if you want. What do I want to be? From the inside to the outside. Because from the moment that I'm able to imagine what do I want to be, at that point there is a why to walk towards a certain direction. Because no one of us needs to meditate because one wants to be a Buddhist. What is the point? Why should I meditate on love? You know, I'm Buddhist. Yeah, in Buddhism one should meditate on love. It doesn't work like that. I want to love
in modo
in
incondizionato.
an unconditional way. I want to see the other and to open my heart. I want to get out of that place of obsession with self-gratification, of the I and the mind, and so fear and faith. Fear of the selfishness, which is not real fear, but I don't want to remain in selfishness. Enough with it. I'm tired with this obsession with the I and the mind, constant going around. I want to be able to include the other and not to exclude the other. I want to be able to live in harmony with anyone. I want to be able to love well with no fear. Wow.
E dal momento in cui voglio quello,
And since I am able to want that, the stronger that aspiration, that desire, the more I will be able to put energy into the process of familiarizing myself with love.
se meditare nell'amore
Because if meditating on love, okay, I need to do that because I want to be a good Buddhist, then eventually that will not work. And so, who do I want to be? We have these symbologies, representations in the Buddhism. We talk about the bodhisattva, the being of great altruism that does everything that he can to develop oneself spiritually, to help the others to get out of their suffering.
diventare un Buddha,
To become a Buddha, even like a step further, to develop one's own qualities at their maximum potential, and as a consequence to overcome any mental defilement and negativity. But okay, let's put the steps in front of us before becoming a Buddha. Who do I want to become? And we can also start from simple things. I want to be a satisfied person.
io voglio essere calmo,
I want to be calm.
io non voglio più vivere con
I don't want to live with anxiety anymore.
io voglio essere
I want to
amorevole,
be loving,
rispettoso,
respectful.
io voglio essere meno
I want to be less reactive. I want to act in a way that is aware. I don't want to react constantly to things. I don't want to victimize myself.
sono diverse cose.
There are many things. Let's take them and first of all let's write them down. Who do I want to be?
Perché se voglio essere
Because if I want to be a person that is more calm, if I want to overcome my anger, then I shall meditate on the antidote, that is patience.
se voglio superare l'odio,
If I want to overcome hatred, then I should meditate on the antidote, which is love.
se voglio superare
If I want to overcome dissatisfaction, then I should meditate on satisfaction.
perché la parte
Because the part of what I don't want is where we see the shadow,
vediamo l'oscurità,
we see the darkness, and we recognize what doesn't work.
ma il percorso
But
di
the
meditazione,
process of familiarization, of meditation, is not to familiarize oneself and to point the finger at towards the shadow,
familiarizzarmi con la luce.
but to familiarize myself with light, with the
Una
antidote.
volta che ho visto la
Once
malattia,
that I've seen
ripetere il quanto
the
la malattia
sickness,
è brutta, non
to repeat how bad the sickness is doesn't heal it, doesn't cure it.
per questo che certe
And
volte
so for this, sometimes,
non voglio
and I
offendere
don't want to
nessuno,
offend anyone with all due respect,
ma io ho la
but I
sensazione
have the
che certe
feeling
volte,
that sometimes,
non tutti, ma un certo tipo di attivismo
not in every type of activism, but in some, there is like something that is based on going against something that doesn't work.
io posso puntare il
And
dito
I can
verso
point
quello
the
che non va
finger
tantissimo,
at what doesn't work
ma se
a
non c'è
lot, but if there is no real alternative,
che è
where
l'antidoto a
I
quello
should
che
put
non
the
va,
energy, which is the
la
real
tendenza è che
antidote,
io vedo quello che non
to
va,
what doesn't work.
comunque rimango
The
in
tendency is that I see what doesn't work, but still I remain
Poi se io
inside
ti
of that.
punto vado a
And then,
puntarti il dito e dire,
if I
"Guarda,
point the
quello che
finger at
stai
you
facendo
and I
non
say,
va bene",
look, what you're doing is
qual è la
not right,
tendenza che
what
abbiamo
is the
quando
tendency that we have when someone points the finger at us?
riconoscere quello che non va
To
bene,
recognize what is not
ammetterlo
good and to
e
admit
voler
it
fare
and to
l'opposto e
want to
applicare
do the
l'antidoto,
opposite and apply the antidote? That would be nice. But actually, what do we do when someone points the finger at us? We put ourselves on the defense and counterattack. And if I want something to change, I identify the problem and I put the energy in the antidote, in the solution, in the light, in order to solve that thing. And so, on one hand, we list what are the aspects of ourselves that we want to overcome. And together with it, on the other side, there are those that we want to develop, that partly are a consequence of what we want to eliminate.
Più abbiamo questo,
the more we have this, the more we have a direction of the why to meditate on something or something else. It's a bit like saying, okay, before taking the car, we need to have clarity on the direction where we want to go. Because if I take my car, and because I like to drive, but I don't have clarity on where I want to go, then I look at the price of the gas and I say, okay, better if I stay home. And also the highway, then, you know, like on the way there are all the difficulties, it's too hot, we find all the various reasons. But on the other hand, if I have certainty that I want to get there, or I know the places where I want to get to, and I take my car, and then I will put also money to spend for the gas, and also endure the heat and everything, because I know where do I want to go.
Cercare di meditare.
To try to meditate without having clarity on what we want and why do we want to meditate, it's a bit like also taking the car and saying, okay, sometimes we can say, yeah, what a nice car, I like the car, I feel well in the car, and as long as there isn't the problem of paying the gas and here and there, one can also stay in that. But when there are the first difficulties, then one says, okay, I don't do it. This is the state. The state of meditation is pleasant, does good in many aspects. But if I don't have a clarity of the why I want to meditate at the first difficulties, then the tendency is to just drop it. And then there is the danger of learning to meditate, but then not use it to go anywhere. It's a bit like, okay, I like the car, I learn how to drive it, I buy a beautiful car, and then I keep it in the garage, I clean it, sometimes I drive around the block, and I don't go anywhere. And so let's remember, the meditative state is a tool to help us to familiarize with one thing or with another.
Ok, con questo abbiamo già un'idea un po' più chiara di
this. Do we have a bit of a clearer idea of what meditation is? Of course, then to meditate, I need to be able to keep my mind still. Because otherwise, it's like the exercise of before. I'm lifting the arm, lifting the weight with the arm, but if I don't have a constancy, then it's like the mind, okay, I need to familiarize myself on the feeling of love. I go there, I'm able to feel love, then I'm hungry, then I go back to love. Okay, then I stay a bit on love. Then there is, yesterday that thing happened, why this and that. Then I go back on love again. Then I need like 10,000 times more, rather than just, okay, meditate on love, I stay on love. So it's a bit like, why do I take the car? Because I want to go to some places. But before that, I need to have a car and to learn how to drive. And similarly, we need to learn how to meditate, to keep the mind still, to remove distractions, and so on, to focus, to develop concentration. That's fundamental. In order to then be able to familiarize ourselves with something or something else. The mistake that sometimes happens is that one thinks that one wants to meditate, and then after one has learned how to meditate and that is pleasant, leaves that as an end in itself and not as a tool that brings to familiarize with other things. It's like I managed to buy a car, it's beautiful, I like it, but I don't want to go anywhere with it.
Ok? Però dobbiamo sempre
But
imparare
we
a guidare.
need still
Dobbiamo sempre imparare a
to
meditare.
learn how to drive it, and
Perciò
so to how to
più io
meditate.
ho voglia di andare in
And
un
the more
luogo,
that
più
I
diventa
have the
anche
desire to go somewhere,
forte la
the
mia
stronger
capacità di
also
superare
my
le difficoltà
capacity
nell'imparare a
will
guidare.
become in overcoming the difficulties
Più io
to
capisco
learn
il
how to
perché
drive. The
meditare,
more I understand
più
why
riuscirò
to
a mettere
meditate, the more I will
energie
also able to put
nell'imparare a
energy
meditare.
into learning how to meditate.
Ok? Anche perché,
Also because,
specialmente all'inizio,
especially at the beginning, it's not easy.
non è complicato,
It's not complicated. It's simple,
però non è facile.
but it's
Poi
not easy.
affronteremo il perché,
Then
il
we
come,
will
dopo
face the
faremo
why and
l'esperienza.
how, and we will have the experience these
Non è
days.
facile
It's
per una
not easy
semplice
for
ragione.
a simple reason.
Noi siamo fatti
We
di
are
abitudini.
made out of habits.
Cambiare
To
abitudine
change habit is difficult.
si parla delle nostre vie neuronali.
Also talking about our
Quando noi pensiamo in
neuronal
un certo
paths.
modo si
When we
creano
talk,
come se
when we
fossero delle
think in a certain way,
autostrade.
it's as if highways are
Anche se
created.
non è positiva
Even if
quell'autostrada,
that
ma poi
highway is
siamo
not
abituati.
positive,
Per
once
fare
that we
un
are
altro
used to it,
percorso di
to take
pensiero,
another
è come
thinking
dover prendere
path,
un
it's
fuoristrada,
like
uscire
taking an off-road
totalmente,
truck
dover
and getting
aprire il
out
percorso
completely and
molto
to
più faticoso.
open a new
Dopo che l'ho
path is much more
ripetuto più
difficult.
volte, piano
But
piano
after that
diventa
I've repeated it many
più
times,
facile.
then it becomes easier and easier.
E come abbiamo detto prima,
And as
noi
we said
non
before,
vogliamo
we
faticare.
don't want to suffer.
E cambiare
We don't want to
abitudine
put effort.
faticoso.
And
Su
to
qualunque
change a
cosa.
habit demands effort
Ok?
on
E fra
anything.
le nostre abitudini,
And among our habits,
da quando eravamo abbastanza piccoli,
since when we were
noi
quite
abbiamo allenato
little,
il
we
nostro
trained
modo di
our
pensare
way of thinking
a fare una cosa alla
to
volta,
do one thing at a
e
time
stare presenti
and to
in
just
quello
be
che stiamo
present
facendo,
with what we are doing,
o ci siamo
or
abituati a
do we train
saltare da un
ourselves to
oggetto
jump
all'altro
from one
costantemente.
object to the other constantly?
Lascio a ognuno la
I don't know,
risposta.
I leave at each one of you the answer.
Immagino io che sia il
I
secondo.
imagine that it's the second one, unfortunately.
La nostra abitudine
Our habit,
quotidiana
daily
non
habit,
è di
is
dire,
not to just
ok,
say, okay,
leggo la mail,
I read the email and I just read the email.
adesso bevo l'acqua,
Now I drink the water,
bevo l'acqua.
I drink the water.
Sento il momento.
I feel the moment of drinking water, I'm here.
Adesso è il momento
Now
di
it's the moment
camminare
of
verso il ristorante.
walking towards the restaurant.
Cammino
I
verso il
walk
ristorante.
towards the restaurant.
Non siamo abituati
I'm
così.
not used to
Siamo abituati
do
che
like
sto
this.
bevendo
We're used to,
l'acqua,
okay,
mentre sto
I'm
bevendo
drinking
l'acqua,
water,
sto
and as I'm
pensando
drinking
che
water,
mi ha
I'm thinking
regalato questa
to
tazza
gave me this
piuttosto
cup
che
or
20 altre
20
cose
other
diverse.
different things.
Quello che la nostra mente è rappresentata
That's why our mind is depicted, is represented by a monkey on a tree
in questo contesto.
in this context.
Ed è, anche se poi dopo chi vuole
Also
guardare,
later we want
vicino alla
to
porta,
see
alla
next to the
sinistra
door
c'è
on the
quel
left
disegno
there is
del
that
percorso che
drawing of
sale
the
con la
path that
scimmia
goes up with the
nell'elefante.
monkey and the
Poi
elephant.
all'inizio c'è il monaco
At the
dietro
beginning
che
there is the
corre, poi
monk
lo
behind
spiegheremo in
running after
dettaglio
it.
quel
Then
disegno.
we'll
Però
explain it in details.
la scimmia,
The monkey,
se noi osserviamo una
if
scimmia
we
in un albero,
observe, like if you
sappiamo
look
di
at a
questa una
monkey
scimmia in
on
un
a tree, I
albero.
don't know if have you ever seen a monkey
Non è che qua ci sono tante.
on a tree? It's not that there are
Ok?
many here,
Però di solito
but
quando vedi una
usually
scimmia in
when
un
you see a
albero non
monkey
sta ferma.
on a tree, it doesn't stay
Non è
still.
che
It's not
non è come
that
un bradipo
it's like
che sta lì.
a sloth
La
that
scimmia
just
cosa
stays
fa?
there. The monkey,
Salta
what does
costantemente da una parte
it do? It
all'altra.
jumps constantly from one side of the tree to the
Come la
other.
nostra mente
It's like
che
our
salta
mind that
costantemente
jumps
da un oggetto
from
a un
one
altro.
object to another.
Ma non perché questa è la
Not
natura
because
della mente,
this
è
is the
come noi ci
nature of
siamo
mind. That's
abituati
how we train ourselves
per varie ragioni.
for
essendo
various
piccoli.
reasons.
Noi ci
Since
siamo
when we were
abituati,
little, we trained ourselves, we familiarized
abbiamo
ourselves,
allenato la nostra
we
mente a
trained our
saltare
mind
da una
to
cosa
jump
all'altra.
from one thing to the
Quando
other.
adesso cerchiamo di dire
So when
mente
we
sta ferma,
try to say, okay, mind, stay still,
vuol dire creare
that
nuove
means to
vie
create
neuronali,
new
vuol dire
neuronal
creare
paths, means to
un'abitudine
create a
diversa.
habit that is
E
different.
all'inizio
And at the
è
beginning,
faticoso.
that's difficult.
Ok? Però è possibile.
But it's possible.
Per quello che quando cominciamo e proviamo,
So that's why when we start to do it and we try, at the beginning it seems very difficult and one can say, I will never be able to do it.
e il primo
No, one little
passaggio
step
è quello
after
di
the other. And the
riuscire
first
piano
step
piano
is
a
to
tenere la mente
be
ferma.
able,
Perché
bit
quando
by
riesco a
bit, to
tenere la
maintain
mia
the
mente
mind
ferma,
still.
posso
Because
scegliere
when I'm able
dove
to do it, then I can choose where I want to place it.
Amore,
Love, gratitude, patience, awareness of the impermanence. I can familiarize myself with many things. There are infinite things. But I have the capacity of putting the mind on that. So when we start to learn how to meditate, one first of all learns how to place mind on something and just keep mind there. Actually, one of the first parts of meditation is to train oneself in concentration. Because if I don't have a good concentration, then I will have a hard time to keep the mind still on one thing, then I will familiarize myself with that very slowly. The more I'm able to keep the mind still, the more quickly I will also familiarize with that. Other than the fact that when we develop a good concentration, this makes life easier on 1,000 things, also in the relationship with others. I'm talking to you, I'm talking with you, I'm talking with you. I'm listening to you, I'm listening. I believe that it has already happened to everyone to talk about something intimate with someone that is not able to listen, that is there but that is not there. So it's like my master, Geshe Thupten Rinpoche, that was my main master of philosophy. Once I received some teachings together with a friend, towards which he was giving private, particular teachings directly to him, and he invited me to participate. And this friend of mine was a person with a beautiful heart, a really good person, but had great problems with concentration. And so when he went to receive teachings with the others, he was often not able to understand everything because he would go somewhere else with his mind. So because my master cared about him, then he said, okay, I give you private lessons. Then he would start to explain something, and then he would look at him, and then he would say, okay, now land the plane, come back. What did I say? Okay, now I repeat. And he would do it, I don't know, like every 3 minutes. And then bit by bit, it will make him repeat what he said and to come back, because he had that habit that he was there, and after a while, he would just go away. Okay, then come back. But it's a matter of habit. And when we're able to maintain our mind still, okay, on anything, like we need to read something, write something, make a drawing, or comes to my mind like the times where the computers, there was not like the autosave system, and often like it happened to do like a long job, and then the computer crashed and I had to start over, and the experience was very interesting because like sometimes maybe I stayed there like 3 hours doing something, like doing a graphical thing, or I don't know, and then after a while you have to start over. But when you have already gone through the whole process and the second time you do it, it's much quicker than the first one. When we are able to have concentration, we are right there, there are no distractions, and now what I have to do is much easier. But on anything. Concentration is one of the great resources that are necessary to live life well enough. If we don't have concentration, if our mind is totally out of control, it's really, really difficult. And the beautiful thing is that concentration is a quality that can be developed. It's not something that either you have it or you don't. It's a matter of habit. And so, in the process of meditating, the first thing that we will do, that actually is the main point of these days, is not to meditate on love or gratitude, is to learn how to take the reins in our hands of our mind. Is to develop the techniques to develop more concentration, to keep mind where we want it to stay, to bring it back to this moment of presence, to then be able to meditate on one thing or another. But the first thing that needs to be done is to create the habit of keeping mind still, to think about one thing at a time, to be present in the present moment.
Questo non è un fine.
This is not an end, is a mean that allows us then to familiarize ourselves with many different things.
Io questa mattina stavo
This
leggendo
morning I was reading some texts on this whole process, and there are very beautiful things in the teachings of Lambrim. Some of these we will face them these days, but the idea will be that of giving you some theoretical basis and then to make some experience, also because the process of familiarizing oneself with meditation is a very intimate thing. It's not something like a group thing, because everyone has its own time, and in general it's something that is done with a lot of intimacy. Usually, I've never seen in the Tibetan context like a group meditation. There is the group meditation with the part of recitation. So you recite the sadhana or the puja, but meditation, silent meditation, like for example the part of training, in the meditation on calm abiding, the so-called samatha state, is always individual. We will do something in group to help a little, but then it's a path that one can follow. But my idea, the goal of these days that we have together is that of managing to have a clear image of what does it mean to meditate, of how to adapt, and also the why to meditate, and if one manages to generate that desire, wow, how beautiful it would be to meditate well. Why? Because I want to reach this and that description of who I want to be. To manage to have that desire and to have a map in front that one knows that one can follow a certain path. This is already a lot.
Tutti lo possono fare.
Everyone can do it. This is something, there is no one that is not able to do it. Absolutely no one. But we need to respect the length of our legs, to take one step at a time. So the goal of these days is to understand what meditation is, to develop a wish, a want to meditate, to make some experience, to understand what are the necessary steps for us, to then be able to apply them in our lives.
One of the
fundamental points, just to conclude,
per veramente
is
imparare
that in order to really learn to meditate well and to go through this path, at the basis there is also that act that I repeated many times, that is to stop victimize oneself. As long as I'm there waiting for the world to change so that I can be well, I will not do what is necessary so that I can be well in the world. I don't know if it is clear.
Ci vuole coraggio.
And it requires courage to look at oneself and say, okay, everything is fine, this is like that, but me, what can I do? And I start bit by bit to take my life in my hands. There are already those that are doing it one way or the other, but more and more. And the fact that it's not just to take in my hands the conduct on how I eat or interact or what I do, but also how I think. And we have this strange capacity of directing our thoughts through our thoughts. It's a strange thing, but it works. One could say, but how can I direct myself if I'm myself? But it works. And I believe that the reason for which it works is that our mind, it's as if it had different layers, different aspects. And when I develop desire, when I develop aspiration, also on a conceptual level, I give a direction of what my action should be, and that familiarizes, makes the thought familiarize with it, and so we are able to direct ourselves. Someone could say, Now in meditation you should just somehow have no desire. I would say that actually for meditation we need to cultivate desire, meant as aspiration, to have clarity on what we want. And the stronger, the more clear also that the desire of wanting to be a more joyous, stable, and so on person, the more I will also be able to put energy into that, and I will also be able to meditate well. I invite you during this lunch break, for who wants to take some time to write down that idealized image of who I want to be, what I wouldn't want to have anymore, starting from the inside to out, not the other way around. Reflecting a bit on that too, because when we verbalize also by writing, that helps us to have more clarity. So now let's make our dedications. It's a matter of, and as a matter of organization, me during these next days, I would like to do it so that when we end the morning session, so that everyone can get to lunch at the right time, we don't have after this moment the time to meet each other, people coming to me, because this creates otherwise two secondary effects. There are many good aspects, but then also to eat becomes very late, and also me, I end up not eating maybe. And so to also do it in the best way for everyone, we have various days together, so in the evening we have a moment for everyone. Now let's make our dedications.
Lame kutse rapten chi namkar trinle chokchur gepadang losan tempe drenme sasum ki drove munsel takto ne gyur chi kewa kunto yanda lama dang dralme cheki pela longche chi sadan lamge yunten rapzone dorje change kopa nyurtop sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin ninsen takto delek pe koncho sumki chingi lob koncho sumki ngodrubutsol koncho sumki trashishon. All'alba,
dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and to sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Buon appetito a tutti e ci vediamo dopo pranzo.